Hello, grounded Taurus. August 22nd and 23rd, 2026 invites you to look closely at something you may have been holding on to for longer than you realize. Not necessarily because it is still right for you, but because it once made you feel safe. Something within you has been shifting quietly beneath the surface, like roots spreading through soil before anything becomes visible above ground. Your instincts may already have been pointing toward this change, and now you may be reaching a place where you can finally recognize what your life has been trying to show you. Perhaps lately you've wondered why you've been doing your best, staying patient, keeping things together, and still feeling as though the reward hasn't matched the effort. That feeling matters, because the issue may not be that you're incapable of moving forward. It may be that your definition of progress has changed while you're still measuring yourself by an older standard. You may want more love, greater financial security, deeper peace, or a clearer sense of direction. Yet part of you may still be holding tightly to what feels familiar, because familiar feels safer than uncertain. There is nothing wrong with that instinct, but you are being invited to ask whether the security you're protecting is actually supporting you. Instead of forcing yourself to become someone completely different, begin by noticing what already feels solid and true within you. Let gratitude come from recognition rather than performance. Appreciate the people who genuinely show up for you, the parts of your life that have remained steady, and the strength you've built through experiences that once felt much harder than they do now. If you're thinking about money, let your focus move beyond simply having more and toward creating a relationship with resources that feels responsible, calm, and sustainable. When you honor what you already have without pretending everything is perfect, you create room to make wiser choices about what deserves to grow. You may also find yourself resisting the decision because you know that changing direction could mean rebuilding something you spent a long time creating. That resistance deserves compassion, but it also deserves honesty. Sometimes the hardest thing for you is not beginning again. It is admitting that something you worked so hard to maintain no longer fits the person you have become. The discomfort can feel like uncertainty, but it may also be the growing edge between an old definition of stability and a more honest one. Think of this as tending a garden that has been part of your life for years. You don't tear everything out simply because one part needs to change. You examine the roots, remove what is no longer healthy, protect what is still thriving, and make space for something new to breathe. If your older beliefs about love, success, or security were shaped by fear of losing what you had, this is an opportunity to build from self-respect instead. Your quiet presence has more influence than you may realize, and people can often sense when someone knows what they value without needing to prove it. That is part of your strength now, Taurus. You don't have to chase every possibility or convince anyone of your worth. You can choose with intention and let your consistency speak for you. When you say, "I'm ready," let that readiness mean that you're willing to meet change without abandoning the parts of yourself that matter most. If something feels unsettled, don't immediately interpret that feeling as failure, because sometimes the ground feels different precisely because you are standing somewhere new. Keep your attention on what you genuinely want, but stay present enough to notice what is already unfolding around you. Wake up with appreciation. Give yourself permission to move at a pace that feels honest. And don't let someone else's doubts pressure you into abandoning your own direction. You are learning that stability does not mean remaining exactly where you are. Sometimes true stability comes from knowing what your roots need, what your life has outgrown, and what you are finally willing to make room for. As this shift develops, let your choices come from value rather than fear, from self-trust rather than scarcity, and from the quiet understanding that growth can be steady even when you cannot yet see the full shape of it. And Taurus, this is where the deeper lesson begins. You are not being asked to throw away everything familiar. You are being asked to become more discerning about what deserves your devotion, what deserves your patience, and what has simply remained because you were afraid to loosen your grip. When doubt rises, return to what is real, what is nourishing, and what reflects the person you are becoming. Your next step does not have to be dramatic to be meaningful. It only has to be honest enough to move you toward a life that feels more like your own. Listen to this message with a calm heart, Taurus, and allow yourself to keep only what genuinely speaks to your experience. Every path has its own rhythm, and you may recognize certain parts immediately while other pieces simply give you something to reflect on. As we move through this reading, we'll look at the themes surrounding love, money, well-being, and family. But the deeper thread connecting them all is your relationship with what you value and what gives you a genuine sense of security. There may be qualities within you that are easy to overlook because they have become so familiar. Your patience, your loyalty, your ability to keep showing up, and your instinct to protect what matters to you. At the same time, there may be moments when holding your ground becomes so natural that you don't notice how your silence or hesitation affects the people closest to you. Someone may ask for your help, your honesty, or simply a little more emotional presence, and you may sometimes pull back when you feel overwhelmed, tired, or unwilling to disturb your own peace. That doesn't make you selfish, Taurus, but it does give you something worth examining. People who truly know you may understand your nature, yet even the strongest relationships can become tired when one person keeps their feelings behind a closed door for too long. This is a good moment to practice a little more empathy without abandoning your boundaries, because being genuine does not mean refusing every request, and protecting your peace does not require shutting everyone else out. Sometimes the most meaningful change begins with something very small: listening a little longer, answering more honestly, or admitting when you simply don't have the capacity to carry something. You may also feel that you've been through enough lately and that you should already know exactly what to do next. But you don't have to force an answer simply because uncertainty makes you uncomfortable. Let your thoughts settle before making commitments, especially when work, love, family, or money are involved, and trust the practical wisdom that comes from knowing your own limits. There is a difference between waiting because you're afraid and allowing something to take the time it genuinely needs to become clear. The energy around you can begin to feel more peaceful when you stop trying to control every outcome and start paying attention to what is already growing. Think of a garden after a long period of careful tending. Not everything blooms at once, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening beneath the surface. You may be moving into a phase where the progress you want becomes easier to recognize, especially when you stop measuring your life only by dramatic changes and begin noticing the quiet signs of stability, healing, and renewed confidence. The sun, as a symbol in this reading, speaks to greater clarity and a return of warmth after a period when things may have felt uncertain. For you, Taurus, that clarity is less about rushing towards something new and more about seeing what is already in front of you with honest eyes. You may begin recognizing which situations genuinely nourish you, which ambitions still deserve your energy, and which old pressures have been taking up space simply because you became accustomed to carrying them. The difficult stretch you've moved through does not have to define the way you approach what comes next. The Six of Wands adds another layer, pointing toward recognition and the quiet satisfaction of seeing your effort acknowledged. This could relate to work, a personal goal, a creative pursuit, or simply a part of your life where you've been patiently building something without much outside validation. The deeper reward is not necessarily applause from other people. It is the moment you realize that you stayed true to something meaningful and can finally see the strength that came from doing so. Let that recognition remind you that your worth was never dependent on someone else noticing it first. The Lovers brings the focus toward connection and the choices you make with your heart. Rather than promising that someone from the past will return or that a particular person will suddenly reveal their feelings, this symbol asks you to become more honest about what mutual love actually means to you. You may be learning to distinguish between attachment and genuine compatibility, between familiarity and emotional safety, and between being wanted and being truly understood. The more clearly you know what you value, the easier it becomes to recognize relationships where affection, respect, effort, and trust are moving in both directions. Justice then asked you to look at relationships and circumstances with clear eyes. If there have been misunderstandings, unequal expectations, or situations where you felt you were giving more than you received, greater clarity may help you understand what needs to change. This isn't about waiting for someone else to be punished or expecting life to settle every score for you. It is about restoring balance through honest choices and stronger boundaries. The star follows with a quieter kind of hope, encouraging you to keep nurturing your goals, your work, your relationships, and your inner life without demanding that everything becomes certain at once. There is something renewing about this stage, Taurus, because you are learning that growth doesn't always arrive like a sudden breakthrough. Sometimes it feels more like fresh water reaching dry soil, slowly restoring something that had been waiting beneath the surface. As you become more selective about where you place your attention, you may also become more aware of the people, opportunities, and choices that genuinely support the life you are trying to build. And when it comes to your health, let that same attentiveness extend to your body. Notice the signals that tell you when you've been pushing too hard, resting too little, or carrying stress longer than you realize. Rather than treating your well-being as another responsibility you have to manage perfectly, think of it as something you cultivate through small, consistent choices. Because the way you care for yourself can quietly influence everything else you are trying to sustain. So, enjoy what brings you pleasure, Taurus, but remember that even the things that comfort you can become unhelpful when there is no room for balance. Over these August 22nd and 23rd energies, your body may be quietly reminding you that comfort and excess are not always the same thing, especially if stress, irregular routines, or emotional pressure have been accumulating beneath the surface. Pay attention to how you feel after you eat, rest, work, and move through the day, because your body often notices what your mind has been trying to overlook. Let common sense guide you without turning well-being into another responsibility you have to perform perfectly, and allow yourself to make small adjustments that genuinely help you feel more settled in your own rhythm. When it comes to work, one of your strengths is the seriousness you bring to anything that feels meaningful and worth building. You tend to understand the value of giving something time, learning its patterns, and allowing your effort to compound rather than expecting immediate results. But there is an important distinction for you to consider. Are you staying because something still has value, or because you've already invested so much time and energy that changing direction feels too costly? If your work has begun to feel increasingly disconnected from what matters to you, don't immediately assume that the answer is to walk away, but don't ignore that discomfort either. Because sometimes dissatisfaction is simply asking you to examine what has changed within you. For Taurus, persistence can be a powerful gift, yet persistence becomes heavy when it keeps you standing in the same place simply because the ground is familiar. There is a difference between patiently tending something that is still alive and repeatedly watering soil that no longer allows anything new to grow. Stability matters when it gives you something solid from which to grow, not when it quietly prevents you from exploring a path that fits the person you are becoming. If you've been searching for work or considering a professional change, keep moving with patience and consistency, but make your search intentional. Look for opportunities that respect your abilities, your values, and the kind of life you actually want to sustain, rather than simply choosing the first thing that promises relief. You don't need to prove your determination by exhausting yourself. One thoughtful application, one meaningful conversation, one carefully chosen connection, or one deliberate step can sometimes be more useful than scattering your energy everywhere, simply to reassure yourself that you're making progress. Give yourself permission to be selective, because not every open door deserves your time, and not every difficult situation is something you are obligated to rescue. Your natural strength in this area comes from being able to create trust over time, and when people sense that you are dependable, sincere, and grounded in what you believe, your presence can speak for you before you ever have to convince anyone of your worth. With finances, the deeper shift is not simply about having more money, it is about changing what security means to you. You may be entering a period where a conversation, an idea, a practical opportunity, or recognition of something you've already been building could open another possibility. But the important part is how consciously you respond to it. An opportunity can look attractive simply because it promises more, yet more is not always the same as better, especially if pursuing it costs you your peace, your time, or the values you're trying to protect. Rather than chasing every promise of quick improvement, ask whether an opportunity can actually strengthen the foundation you're creating for yourself, and whether it still feels right when you look beyond the immediate reward. This is a meaningful time to examine the connection between money and self-worth. Sometimes you may hold on to what you have because you're afraid there won't be enough, while at other times you may spend simply because comfort gives you a temporary sense of safety, or because having something tangible helps you feel that everything is under control. Neither reaction needs to define you, and you don't have to judge yourself for having those instincts. You simply need to become more conscious of what is underneath them. Real financial confidence grows when your choices reflect what you genuinely value instead of being driven by fear, comparison, or the need to prove that you're doing well. The more secure you become in your own worth, the less you need every financial decision to reassure you that you're safe. Try not to divide yourself between too many possibilities at once. You may be able to imagine several different paths, but imagining every possible future can sometimes make it harder to give your full attention to the one that is actually in front of you. Choose one or two actions that genuinely support the future you're trying to build, and give them enough attention to develop roots rather than constantly pulling them up to see whether they have grown yet. Small decisions made consistently can create a stronger sense of stability than dramatic moves made from anxiety, and the more clearly you understand what matters to you, the easier it becomes to recognize which opportunities deserve your time and which ones are simply distractions wearing the appearance of possibility. And when it comes to love, Taurus, you tend to feel deeply, but part of your growth is learning to recognize what healthy love actually feels like for you beneath the expectations you've carried from the past. You may have a particular picture of commitment, loyalty, or partnership that was shaped by earlier experiences, family patterns, or relationships that taught you what to accept and what to fear losing. Sometimes familiarity can make a relationship feel safer than it truly is, simply because you already know how to live inside its patterns. Take some time to understand what you need emotionally, what you are genuinely willing to give, and where you may have been holding on to an attachment simply because letting go would require you to rebuild your sense of security from the ground up. If you're getting to know someone, allow the connection to reveal itself through consistency, rather than trying to decide too quickly where it is going. Notice whether their actions support their words, whether you feel respected when you express your needs, and whether the effort between you is naturally moving in both directions, rather than leaving one person constantly reaching while the other simply responds. Attraction can be exciting, but consistency tells you much more about whether something can become emotionally safe over time. If you're already in a relationship, these August 22nd and 23rd energies can bring attention to places where emotional familiarity has replaced genuine connection, creating a quiet desire to bring more warmth, playfulness, curiosity, and presence back into the relationship. You may find yourself wanting to do something simple together, spend more intentional time at home, laugh more, or break a routine that has become predictable enough that neither of you notices how distant it has made you feel. Sometimes renewal doesn't require a dramatic gesture. It can begin with putting the phones away, sharing a meal without rushing, taking a walk, or allowing a conversation to become more honest than usual. But remember that closeness cannot be created by one person alone, and your willingness to reconnect does not mean you should pressure your partner into feeling exactly what you feel at the same moment. Give the other person room to meet you naturally, because the kind of love you are learning to choose is not built through insistence or fear of losing what you have. It grows where both people feel safe enough to show up honestly, where effort is mutual, and where affection has room to deepen into something more meaningful as the connection continues to unfold. In love, give the other person enough room to show you where they truly stand. You may be ready to move closer, make plans, or bring more warmth into a connection, but you don't have to carry the entire emotional weight of it yourself. If you're single and someone has caught your attention, there is nothing wrong with making your interest known, but let their actions answer you as much as their words do. You are learning that genuine connection feels mutual rather than something you have to convince into existence. If you've been talking with someone recently, allow the relationship to develop at its own pace instead of trying to secure an outcome before you really know what is there. Your steadiness can be one of your greatest strengths, especially when you use it to remain open without becoming attached to a particular result. Over August 22nd and 23rd, you may find yourself noticing more clearly whether a connection gives you peace, respect, and emotional consistency, and that awareness can tell you far more than trying to predict where the relationship is going. Family matters carry a similar invitation toward healing and appreciation. Some tensions may soften when you stop trying to solve everything at once and simply become more present with the people you love. Your growth can change the atmosphere around you, especially when you communicate honestly without turning every disagreement into something that needs to be won. And simple conversations may reveal how much affection has remained underneath old frustrations. There may also be family patterns you've carried for years without questioning them. Being the dependable one, keeping everyone calm, taking responsibility before anyone asks, or staying quiet because you don't want to disturb the peace. Those habits may once have helped you feel secure, but you are allowed to ask whether they still serve you now. Healthy connection does not require you to hold an entire family together by yourself, and maintaining boundaries does not mean you love people any less. As your confidence becomes more grounded, people may begin to value your perspective in a different way. You don't have to become the person with all the answers. Sometimes your greatest contribution is simply being steady enough to listen without immediately taking responsibility for fixing what someone else is experiencing. Shared meals, laughter, ordinary conversations, and small moments of cooperation can restore closeness in ways that grand gestures sometimes cannot, especially when everyone is given room to be themselves. Your energy may feel somewhat uneven at times, so give yourself permission to slow down before reacting. When emotions rise, especially around family, money, or commitments, take a moment to separate what actually needs your attention from what is simply stirring inside you. Organization can help you find your footing again, not because every part of life needs to be controlled, but because clear priorities make it easier to respond instead of reacting from pressure. One of the more constructive themes around you is trust. There may be a person whose reliability deserves to be recognized, or a situation where cooperation could help you accomplish something that would be difficult to build entirely on your own. Trust does not mean handing over your judgment. It means allowing someone trustworthy to contribute while you remain clear about your own boundaries and expectations. That kind of partnership can lead to an idea, a collaboration, or a practical opportunity that feels meaningful because it is built on mutual respect rather than urgency. At the same time, keep an eye on the way you handle money when you're seeking comfort. Taurus understands the appeal of surrounding yourself with things that feel good, beautiful, familiar, or reassuring, but there is a difference between enjoying what you've earned and spending to quiet an emotion that needs attention. Before taking on another expense or commitment, ask yourself whether the purchase is genuinely aligned with your priorities or simply giving you a temporary feeling of safety. The same principle applies to promises and obligations. You may find yourself uncertain about how to handle something you've agreed to, particularly if your circumstances have changed and you realize you no longer have the time or energy to follow through. Don't allow discomfort to make you disappear from the conversation. A clear message, an honest explanation, or a sincere apology is often kinder than allowing uncertainty to stretch on. You can acknowledge that you cannot do something without turning that limitation into a judgment about your character, because being responsible also means knowing when your capacity has reached its limit. If you're a student, you may find it harder to settle your attention when your mind is occupied with other responsibilities or emotions. Instead of waiting until motivation suddenly appears, make the material easier to approach by changing the way you study. Listen to relevant audio, explain the subject aloud, use practical examples, or break a difficult task into smaller pieces. The goal isn't to make every study session effortless. It is to create enough structure that you keep moving even when enthusiasm is temporarily missing. And when it comes to compatibility, don't reduce connection to a simple list of signs that are supposed to guarantee an easy relationship. Airs may bring a directness that challenges you to move beyond overthinking. Leo can offer warmth and confidence that encourages you to express yourself more openly, while Libra may connect with your appreciation for balance, beauty, and respectful conversation. The value of these connections depends on the people involved, of course, but each can highlight a different quality. that helps you understand what kind of interaction feels natural and nourishing to you. Taurus, as you move through August 22nd and 23rd, 2026, keep returning to the quiet question underneath all of this. What are you choosing because it genuinely belongs in the life you're building? And what are you keeping simply because it has become familiar? You don't have to make every decision immediately, and you don't need to force clarity where it hasn't arrived yet. Let your choices become more deliberate, let your relationship show you whether effort is mutual, and let your sense of security come increasingly from knowing yourself rather than from controlling everything around you. Take what resonates from this reading and leave what doesn't, because your own judgment remains more important than any prediction. If these reflections gave you something useful to think about, you can support the channel with a like through the link in the description or by using the QR code on screen. Every thoughtful gesture helps us continue creating this space. And if you choose to return for future readings, you'll always be welcome here, as we keep exploring the questions, patterns, and possibilities that continue to unfold.